Hi everyone. In today's video, we're gonna start interacting with our Laravel Backend API. We're gonna start integrating all our endpoints within our VueJs application. In previous video, we finished designing the UI. We built the public pages like login form here and the registration form page here. But also we got the administration page. If I type here admin, we're gonna fall back to the index page, which is the dashboard. We're going to tap /admin, and then we got also two pages: create posts, where the user can enter and create a post. But also we got a post list where we are going to list all our posts. Now we need to start with the registration form here. We're gonna start with the registration form and then the login form. I'm really excited about these parts. Let's get started. Now, here, the first thing we have to do is to create first the action. We are going to create an HTTP request. Here, I'm going to create a folder. Here, folder within the auth. Let me zoom a little bit. Here, within the auth folder, I'm going to create another folder. It's going to be actions, where we are going to put our auth actions. Here, the first action that we're going to start with, it is going to be register user.ts. Here we're going to use fetch API in order to make HTTP requests to the server. Here I'm going to use a sync. I'm going to say function register user, and then here I'm going to pass it an input. An input, it is going to be a type of, if you go within the register page, the input type, it is going to be ID register interface. We are going to provide name, email, and password. And then here, I'm going to type it with ID register input, and I'm going to import this interface. Now here, I'm going to use a promise. Our function is going to return a promise. And here, I'm going to do resolve rejects. And here, I'm going to use fetch API. I'm going to do const res await. Here I'm going to do fetch, and then here I'm going to do this sync. Here I'm going to pass here sync and await. Here await, and then here we are going to pass here the base URL. And then here, I'm going to wait for the response. I'm going to do data. I'm going to do await res.data, res.json, here like this. And then here, I'm going to check if we got an error within our response. I'm going to do if we got an error, res. Okay, if it is false, we are going to reject an error. I'm going to do reject no error. I'm going to pass here message. I'm going to say unexpected error. Unexpected error occur like this. Unexpected error occur. And if our request returns a better response, we are going to resolve the data like this. Here we just pass the fetch API, and then here I'm waiting for the response. Here we are going to pass also an object, and our object, it is going to have here headers. Headers, we are going to precise here. It is going to be content type. Going to be application/JSON. Here like this. Okay, headers like this, headers, content type like this. And also we need to pass the body, the input that we want to send to the server. We're going to do JSON stringify method, and then here you can see the stringify method must takes a JavaScript value, and then it is going to convert it to a string. And then we are going to pass here an input. Here, an input. This is the input that we want to send to the server of iRegister input interface. And then here, that's all. We need to specify also the HTTP verb method post. We need to register. We are going to hit the register endpoint within our Laravel application. Here, if we go within the API, that PHP file, you can see here we need to hit this endpoint, and this endpoint accepts post HTTP verb that we want to hit it. But also we need to, if we go within the auth controller, you can see that our register method returns a response of a user, the created user, and the message. And here we need also to specify, you can see our register function returns a promise. And you can see here, TypeScript infers it that our register user function returns a promise of unknown. We need to specify a return type of this function. The return type, as you can see within the auth controller on the response, the register function returns a user, created user, and the message. We are going to create a type, yes, right here. I'm going to do this. Type register response. Here, if you are not familiar about TypeScript, you can go check it out, my TypeScript course. I teach everything you need to get started with this course. Now, let's continue. Here, I'm going to say user, our backend return a response of a user, and I'm going to type it with iRegister. And then I'm going to say, but also our function returns a message. It is a type of string. And here I'm going to copy this. I'm going to type our promise. And if we over the register user, you can see now TypeScript infers it to return a register response. Now register response type. Let me do this. It's better. I follow the conversion. Now you can see here we need also to pass the URL. The URL, it is localhost because we need to point to our backend. Let me first open. Let me zoom a little bit. I want to run my Laravel backend. Let me see if it is running. It is not running. Let me run it. I'm gonna cd in the project and then cd blog application like this. I need to run my Laravel application. I'm going to do start, then do color php artisan serve. Now I just run my Laravel application server. Yeah, it is going to start. Now here we need to create another folder right here. I'm going to call it shared. Within the shared folder, I'm going to create a file. I'm going to name it app.ts. And then within the app.ts, I'm going to create a constant here. I'm going to say here API type. And then here, I'm going to say we are going to have within our API type, I'm going to say this. It is going to be a type of record. I'm not going to use this. Let me change it because I want that our API looks like this. I'm going to say app API, and then here I'm going to pass here two key development, and within the development we're gonna have the base URL. The base URL, it is going to be this. This is the base URL of our Laravel backend. I'm gonna copy it here, but also we got the API URL. The API URL, it is this base URL. I'm gonna remove this space right there. The base URL and then /API. This is the API URL. And then I'm gonna copy this. I'm gonna do this. and here I'm gonna say here production, because if you want to shift our application to production, what we are going to do is to pass only here the production URL. Let me show you something. I'm going to do app, and then here I'm going to export cons, going to do export API, and then here I'm going to add another field right here. Let me comment first this, but I need first to tap my app API constant. I'm going to do this. I'm going to create a tap alias. I'm going to create an interface I API I app I API like this, and then I'm going to say it is going to have a development key, development, and then it is going to have two key, the base URL like this string, and the API URL. So it's going to be a string, and it is going to have another key. I'm going to copy this. It is going to be the production key here, and then I'm going to copy this interface. I'm going to tap it here, because if we come over here and we remove this, we're going to get another tapping error. We need to specify this API URL. And but also going to have another key within the API interface. I'm going to say API status, and then I'm going to say it is going to be a boolean here, and then here I'm going to say pass API status. I'm going to say false. API status, I'm going to say, oh no, I'm going to say that the API status, let me create another type here, type, I'm going to say API status. I'm going to say that it is going to have two key. I'm going to tap it with tap alias. I'm going to use here a union here, type alias. I'm going to say it's going to have a production like this, and then here I'm going to change it. Let me copy this right down, and then here I'm going to do this. I'm going to say right now we are in development, because here when we are going to shift in production, we are going to come over here on API status. We're going to do production, because here I want to create a constant const app. Going to do export const app, and then I'm going to do app API that status. If the status it is equal to production to development, I'm gonna return app API to development. I'm gonna return this object right here. Else, I'm going to return this for the production like this. This is for the production. Here you can see, let me refactor my page. Here I'm refactoring my file. I'm going to do this, and here you can see we need to export the app, but right now we are in development because we need to eat this development key, and then here I'm going to say here we need to pass development, because they're going to return this key right here. And then within the register.ts, if we get back in, and then here I'm going to use template literal and pass app, and then here you can see we need to export this app within the shared app, and then I'm gonna eat something. I'm gonna eat the API URL. The API URL, it is this. This is the API URL, and then here we need to do /register. Now we just hit this endpoint. Here we just going to hit this endpoint of this function, which is the register. Now let's go back here. You can see register. Now we need to call this function register user. We need to export it. We're going to do exports and then register, and we move to the register page. And then here you can see we got a register user function. We need to make it async because we are going to pass it an asynchronous function. And here I'm going to use try catch, and then here I'm going to do const data and awaits for the response. Here I'm going to pass here the inputs. Here register. Let me rename this. We got the similar name here. Let me get into the register use. I'm going to say here creates user HTTP. Here I'm going to do this. Okay, and get into the register and call this function, and I'm going to import it. Yeah, and then you can see here we got an error because we need to specify the parameter, which is this register input. Here need to do register input dot value, and our function create register, it is going to return something. Here let me console first the data to see what it returns back, and then here I'm going to console the error. Now let's test our create user HTTP function and see if it works pretty well. Now let's open the browser. You can see we are on the register form exactly on a register page. I can say that, guys. Now here within the register we need to inspect, and let me make a little refresh, and then here I'm going to try to create a user. I'm going to say Jeff and jeff@gmail.com. And then here, if I move to the network tab here, I'm gonna hit register. And here you can see we just sent a request to our Laravel backend. And here you can see you got a validation error, which means that it seems that our create user HTTP function works pretty well. Because here we got an error, the name field is required, the email field is required, the password field is required. And within the payload fields, you can see that this is the payload that we are sending to our endpoints. And here, if let's get into the console, you can see here we are getting our promise. It is rejecting an error, unexpected error occurred. Within the register function, here it is returning this error. Instead of this, it should return the data, it should resolve the data. And I noticed that we are making a typing error here. Instead of content type, we should write content type like this. So that our promise, it is not going to return an error. If I go back again within the browser, let's type here another name to check if it is working. I'm going to pass another name. I'm going to say Isaac. And then here I'm going to pass here an email of Isaac, and then I'm going to send again. And you can see that our server just returned data. Here you can see we are getting an object of a user, of a created user. Because if you move to the network tab here, you can see we sent a request here. This is the last request. I can see here we have sent Isaac to the server, and then our server has returned a response of a user, of the created user object, and the message. Here you can see your account was created. It means that our create user HTTP function, it is working pretty well. Now we need to type our data variable. I can see it is typed. we need to display now the message once we have created our user. Here you can see that we just created a user, our function, it is working pretty well. Now we need to do this. We're going to do console.message, and here I'm going to console the error. Let's create one more user to see how it works in the browser. Let me pass another name here. I'm going to say xanook@gmail.com, and then here I'm going to pass here the name Excel. Here I'm going to say Nook, and then here excel@gmail.com, and the password. Let's create a second user and then register. You can see here we got a message, your account was created. And if we try to send again this email, you can see that error, unexpected error. You can see here our server returned an error. The email has already been taken. Now we need to install another cool library, which is toast notification, that we're gonna use to display error message. Here I'm on the GitHub account of the toast notification library. Now we need to install it within our VueJs application. You need to go on GitHub. Here I'm gonna pull the link down in the description, and I'm going to copy this. Here I'm going to copy all this, and you can see here, let me zoom a bit. You can see here, to install Vue toast notification, we need to import this line within our main.ts file. Let me move to the main.ts file, and then we need to add it right there. You can see toast Vue toast notification, and we need also to use it. Once we pass it, we need to use it with an object. And here I'm going to copy this as well and paste it right there. Here we just inject the toast notification library within VueJs. We pass it to Vue instance. Now here our toast notification, it is available in our application, and the options object, we need to pass it some parameter, because here if we scroll down, and then you can see here toast notification has a bunch of properties. Here you can see we got a position. When we pass a position, we can say left means we need to display our message to the left. For example, we can say top right, we need to display our notification to the top right, or bottom right, like this. Yeah, these are properties we need to do this. But we are not going to do that. I've already done it, because we are not going to spend more time here. I've already do this. Here you're gonna find the code on GitHub. Here you can see I've already do this. I've created a function show error. You can see show error. When we need to display an error message, we're going to call this function, and you can see I use toast error. I invoke the error function, and I've already passed it or required parameter. You can see here we got timeout, the time requires the time our show error method, it is going to be available on the screen, and we got other properties. But also we got the success function, and I invoke the success function, and this method, it is going to I'm going to pass it, or our success message comes from our Laravel server. Now I'm going to copy this and move to the helper folder. Within the helper folder, I've already created it here. Let's see. Here I need to create one more folder. I'm going to create helper, where I'm going to put all our helpers. I'm going to say toast notification.ts, and then I'm gonna copy this right there. And then the first thing I'm gonna do is to call the success message. That is going to be the first function that I'm going to use here. I'm gonna replace it with the console.log, and then I'm gonna call it. And here, if I create another user, let's move to the browser. Here you can see I'm gonna pass here a different name. I'm gonna say here, I'm gonna pass here iJimbo, and here the name it is going to be iJimbo, and here if I register a new user, boom, you can see here we got a message. Here we got your account was created. Here, this is the message. Yeah, our toast notification was installed successfully. If you doesn't yet installed this library, you can go on Google and tap toast notification, and you're gonna land on this documentation. It is on GitHub, but also I'm gonna put the link down in the description. Don't worry. Yeah, this is the library. Now we need to do one more thing. We need to display the error. Let's say here we need to suppose here we just created a user iJimbo, and here if I try to create another user with the same email address, we're gonna get a validation error. Here you can see here the email has already been taken, and our Laravel backend returns an array of errors. And here, because our Laravel it is returning an array of errors, and here you can see within the console tab, you got this error. It doesn't display this error. We are going to do this here. I'm going to do this. Because this array here, this error, it is an array of errors. Now I'm going to do I'm going to use for const message of errors as string. I cast the error to an array of string because you can see here our Laravel it is returning an array of string. Here you can see here we got a string, and if we got more errors we're gonna get an array which contains more strings. Now here we need to display. I'm gonna get again within the toast notification file. I'm gonna copy the show error function within the register page, and then I'm gonna pass here the message, and here we need to import this message, and here you can see here we have made a mistake within the register user.ts. Here instead of rejecting this error we should reject the data, because within the data function it holds data returns by our Laravel server. Here this data here it holds even errors. It holds even errors from our Laravel backend. We need to reject it because it can returns, if it returns invalid data, we are going to return this, and the invalid data can be an array of errors. Now let's try to check this. I'm gonna go again within the browser and try to create a user with the same email address, and here I'm going to put here the same iJimbo, and here you can see we got a validation error. Email has already been taken, and you can see that we just our create user HTTP function, it is working pretty well. Now we just finish registering a user. But one more thing we have to do is to reset our register form when we finish creating a user, and that's what we're going to do. But also you can see when we hit the register button, it doesn't loading, it doesn't show that the process, our promise, it is executing. Now we need to do two things. Here I'm gonna start first by creating the code that is going to initialize our register form, and then I'm gonna move to the register button. Here we're gonna start first with a code that is going to initialize this, and this to initialize the register input I'm going to do here, I'm going to do this that value I'm gonna assign it an object, and then I'm gonna say as I register input, like this. This is how we can reset this. And once we reset it, we need to create one more thing. Here I've already copied a code on bootstrap.com. Here I'm gonna copy this button. You can see here we got a button right here, and if I do this, you can see that we got a spinning. Let me close this first. Here you can see that our button right now have a loading icon, and we need to do this. We need our button, when we click on register, while the function will be processing, it is going to change in this status. The loading icon, it is going to show up. Now here you can see here we need to modify this. I'm going to create a base component. I'm gonna name it base button. Here within the component folder, we need to create one more component. I'm going to say base btn.view, and then here I'm gonna get into the register. I'm gonna copy this within the register, within the base btn. I'm gonna create first the template. Here I'm gonna copy this, and you can see here within the header component that we created earlier, we got a script, and here we use define macros to define a prop. I'm gonna copy this code and move to the base button, and here I'm gonna do the same thing here, but here you can see I'm not going to use this. I'm going to create here a label. I'm going to say label. It is gonna be a type of string. It is going to be the name of the button, and here I'm going to say I'm going to pass here a span. I'm going to say here props dot label, and then here I'm going to pass here a loading. It is going to be a type of boolean, because when we hit this function, it is gonna change the status. But also I'm going to say if. Here I'm going to remove this right there, and if our prop it is true, if the loading function it is true, this loading icon it is gonna show up. And let's try to import these components. Let's get into the register page and import this base button component. Yeah, you can see we just import it. Now let's use the base button components. Here you can see here we got a simple button, simple bootstrap button, and we need to replace this button with the base components that we just created. Here I'm gonna use it, and here you can see when I over the base component, you can see that right here we are getting an error because we need to pass it the label, and the label it is a type of string, and we need to pass it one more property, which is the loading and type of boolean. The label it is the name of the button. Here I'm gonna pass it register, and I'm gonna pass it loading, like this, loading, oh sorry, loading, and then here I'm going to say true. Here we just pass to property to our base button. Here you can see we just pass its label and loading here. And if we get into the browser and let's do this, it doesn't show up within the browser. You can see, let me get into the base button and see what's the problem here. I'm saying if we pass through this base button, it is gonna show up, but actually it doesn't. Let me see why we are getting this error. And here define props label, and then we just call our function. Here it seems that we didn't register to pretty well. It is well registered, but why it doesn't, let me refresh. Yeah, we just need to refresh the web page. You can see here we got a button, a big button, and we got a loading icon on it here. And we need to hide this register label when the loading button it is spinning. Now we need to get into the base button, and then here we are going to check if we're going to do if props that loading it is true. We are going to add it. We are going to add it here. This exclamation mark. It means it is going to modify true to false. And here you can see it disappear. The loading button it is show up. And if we try to pass here false, it stops and we got the register. But also we need to add one more thing here, because you can see here when our loading button it is spinning, we have a possibility to hit the button, and we are going to disable. We are going to add another property on it. We are going to add disable here, disabled. We are going to say disabled, it is going to be true, yeah, like this. And then here let's add something here, loading, and then here you can see we doesn't have a possibility to hit this button, because here our button it is in pending state. It is waiting for the promise to resolve in order to get out of this state. Now if we put here false, you can see, yeah, we just get a button which is clickable. And here we can see that we just created a base button component that we are going to use everywhere within the application. Now the next thing to do is to create a constant up here. I'm going to say const loading. I'm gonna name it loading status. I'm gonna pass it ref and then false. And when we are going to call our create user HTTP function, I'm going to say that loading state, that value, it is going to be true. And when it is going to finish, we are going to change the state to false. And if we got an error, we are going to change also the state to false. Yeah, it is ready now. Now let's try to check, and let's create a user. Let's try to pass here John Doe, and then here I'm gonna pass here John. I'm gonna very free, and here the password, and then here I'm going to register John. Yeah, you can see we just register the user, but our button doesn't spin at all. It seems that we forgot to add the loading status property to this button. That's why it doesn't spin at all. Now we need to try to create another user, but also you can see we need also to reset our form when we just register a new user. You can see here we just first added the base button on the loading, we just add the loading status on the base button, and also here we need to reset our validation. I'm gonna call it, when we just created a user, we need to do this $value.reset. This is how we reset. Let me zoom a little bit. You can see this is how we reset the validation, by using this property right here on this composable here, and then you're gonna call v.value.reset. This is how we reset validation. Now let's get into the browser and try to create another user. Here I'm gonna pass another user. I'm gonna say Michael here, and then I'm gonna copy the name, and here I'm gonna click on register, and you can see our button it is spinning. And after finish creating the user, we got a message, your account was created, and the loading stage has changed. And that's pretty much it, guys, for this video. We're just interacting with the Regis endpoints. And in the next coming up video, we're going to start interacting with the login endpoints. I see you there.